Hey guys, gonna post another Kubota video for you. These videos are the kind that I don't really like doing because it's the kind that show you what kind of problem I have when something breaks. So you can see I was putting some gravel down here in front of my barn, and you know, all of a sudden I've got the engine's running fine, but there's no hydraulics. So basically I can't go forward, can't go reverse, the bucket doesn't go up and down, the hoe doesn't work, power steering's not working. So basically it's inoperable. It's just dead where it's sitting. You know, I got a little bit into my pile of gravel there, and then it just stopped where I'm at. So I'm going to show you what I found I think the problem is, and then maybe what I'm going to do to try to take care of it. You know, this is my second Kubota, and I've got almost 2,500 hours on this one. In total, I've got probably almost 6,000 hours, 5,000 to 6,000 hours running these little subcompact tractors. This is a BX23. This one here is probably about 12 or 14 years old. I think this is an 04 or an 06. I'd have to look back on the paperwork. I'm about ready for number 3 because I'm getting this one worn out. So let's take a look at what I found the problem is. I've already kind of took off the battery cover, see how I'm going to deal with this. You can see hour-wise on this thing, man, I'm at 2483 and a half. So I'm almost there, 2,500. In my experience, you might find that if you have one of these, you know, you can tell I run the crap out of this thing. I'm not easy on it. I'm a contractor and I use it. You would not believe some of the projects I've done with this little tractor. I'll be posting more Kubota videos because people seem to like to talk about them and like to watch the Kubota videos, and often people ask me, why don't you get a bigger tractor? Well, there's a lot of reasons I'll go into on the other videos. Right now, let's look at what's wrong with this one and how I can get it going again. So first thing we're going to look at underneath the tractor is I heard some clattering noise. I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I looked under the hood. It seemed like something was loose is what I could hear. I've already taken one little section apart. Otherwise, I would run it for you so you could hear it. But I've already taken something apart just to try to find out what was going on in the moment there. But I could hear something running and kind of jingling, and it sounded like it was loose. But I couldn't figure out what it was. So as I went underneath, I noticed that the drive shaft right here, it runs to the back, and back here I think is your pump, and the drive shaft runs back here to run the pump. And if you look back in there, you can see the fan. Well, I noticed that wasn't even turning. The fan wasn't spinning. So I was like, well, what's going on here? So I just sort of followed the drive shaft up, and I found that this coupler right here, I don't really know what this is called, so I'm going to go to the Kubota dealer. I'll fill you in after I get one of these, but I think this is what's bad. I took out some of the bolts that were in here. There were 3 bolts that used a 12mm socket. I took those out to see if that was loose, because this coupler was spinning, but the drive shaft that goes back to the back was not spinning. So I'm like, okay, well, obviously there's something wrong there. So hopefully it isn't too expensive or too bad to fix. I mean, those bolts came out pretty easy. There was a C-clamp right there that I took off, and I slid back this little seal from the outside. But I can't really make any more progress there. So it doesn't seem too bad at first sight. Here's the problem. Everything underneath this tractor is welded up. So you cannot access this drive shaft from the bottom easily. There's all kinds of stuff in the way. The whole way through here. You got your fuel pump, your fuel filter, wiring, all kinds of stuff. And you can see there's welds right there. So this whole plate from underneath the bottom of the tractor is not accessible. So in order to get this drive shaft off, I gotta take those bolts out. I'm gonna also have to take the ones off that are back here by this fan, like that, so that I can get, there's another coupler just like it right back here. You can see it. There's another coupler very similar right back there that I'm also gonna have to take loose, and you can see those 3 bolts I talked about that are still in place there. I'm gonna have to take that out, and then it's like, well, how do you get the drive shaft out? So here's what I came up with. Now you think I'd have a service manual for this thing at this point, but I don't. So, you know, I work on stuff all the time. What I figured out here is, you know, I'm gonna have to take off basically the floor system. So I think all we gotta have to do to take that off is probably take out these bolts right here. Looks like there's one there. There's one here. And there might be a couple underneath of here. I don't know when I take this mat off. It doesn't look too tough. I got to take off the knob right there. I have to take off some of those bolts. And basically I'm going to raise this whole floor up out of the way. It doesn't look too tough because, for instance, under the seat, there's just like, right there's a cotter pin. I can pull those cotter pins, unhook the wiring, and the seat should come right off. Then over here for the pedal, you know, it looks like there's 2 bolts right here for the pedal. It'll come off. This, I don't know if I'm gonna have to take this pedal off or not. I might be able to just leave it on there. I'll have to see, but it doesn't look like there's too many bolts. There's a couple hiding right back here under the seat. So I'm looking at somewhere around maybe 6 or 8 bolts. And, you know, the pedal bolts, that's 10. And then we got the seat clips like that. And the knob right here for your mower deck height adjustment. So once I get that stuff off, I think that this whole floor, I'll be able to just take it off. And after I do that, I'm thinking I can get to the drive shaft, get it out of there so that I can replace both those couplers more easily. So that's what's going on. That's what's happening right now with this Kubota. And when I get some of that taken apart, I'm going to show you what that looks like here in just a minute. And we'll go from there. Otherwise, keep watching. I'm going to post more Kubota videos because you guys seem to like it. And luckily, I don't get a lot of videos where I got to post problems of the Kubota because, you know, I've had this thing for almost 2,500 hours and I've had some minor problems with it. But considering how hard I run this thing in a commercial setting, and pretty much I run it every day, nearly every day. I've had, knock on wood, with either of my tractors that I've had, this being the second one, very little, quote, major problems. You know, I've had all kinds of tiny little stuff that's going to go on that you can imagine, you know, especially see some of my other videos with some of these backhoe hoses, which I'm about to replace all of these because I've had to replace 3 of them independently now. But let's get back on this problem and we'll go from there. Okay, so I got it apart. Here's your update. As I suspected, the coupler here that goes on the end of the drive shaft. I don't know if it's really a drive shaft, but yeah, that's what I'm calling a drive shaft because it drives the pump assembly. So, the coupler there is pretty messed up on the inside. I took it off, and as I took it off, found a little bit more damage. The splines that are on the end of the shaft are messed up too. So, I'm going to have to actually replace this whole shaft. And while I'm doing that, I guess I'll get a new coupler, new shaft. You can see to get this off, I just took off this little C-clip. And it goes on the inside of this coupling right here. So, once I took off the floor piece of the tractor, then I could just pretty much get it out from from underneath there. I just had to fish it out from this hole that's right up through here. Had to take this wire loose. There was just a little zip tie right over here holding this wire on, because the parking brake lever goes across here. So the parking brake lever kind of goes across like this and sits in this little bracket over here. It was underneath the wire, so I had to loosen that so I could get it up out of there. There was a few more things holding on this than I thought. The primary issue that was tough was the knobs that hold your controls here for your hydraulic valve, and also your mower deck height over here. That stuff, they were kind of hard to get off of there without breaking them. So that took me a little while to get that off. And there was a couple more bolts I didn't see. I mean, I knew that this one was here, but there's also a couple bolts inside there that you have to get. These are carriage bolts you have to get from underneath. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 carriage bolts that you have to get from underneath. Then there's 1, 2 bolts that you get from right there. And then of course you got to get your pins right there that go through your seat. Those are just cotter pins. And then up in the front you have to get 1, 2 bolts right there. And on this side you have to get 1, 2 bolts over there. And then your floor assembly there's a hole big enough you can slide this pedal out. I thought I was going to have to take the pedal off, but I didn't. That'll slide right through there. So just some wiggling and some maneuvering, I got that all out of here. So you're done. You end up with just this piece right here. It's actually upside down there. And the bottom looks like that, and you can see the hole there is pretty big for the pedal to come out. And then speaking of pedal, for the drive pedal on mine, it just has the one drive pedal, and there's just 2 bolts to hold it on, right here and here. So that's it. So yeah, tomorrow morning I'm going to go through, and all this all together, said and done, took me about, I had a little trouble because some of these were rusty, and basically I spent about half of my time just trying to get these knobs off without breaking them. You can see there's a little pin that goes through there, and on this one it's just sort of a flat one. This pin just slides in so that it gives the handle something to grip on when it turns. That's a roll pin. It's just tapped through there. But being on there so long, those are hard to get off. I did manage to get them off just by tapping on the back side gently until they started to move. But that took me probably 20 or 30 minutes to get those off. The rest of this whole setup probably only took me about 15 minutes to get apart. So I'd say all in all, I had about 45 minutes to an hour tops of getting this apart. And I'm going to go to the dealership and see how much these parts are going to be, and then we'll put it back together. So keep watching. Okay, so I got my parts to repair this thing, and all these parts, these actually are the tie rod ends, so those kind of aren't included in this repair, but everything else that I got basically is shown on the schematic right here. And you know, these are the things that I needed that were highlighted in green. And you can see the couplings, the shaft, the joint. So as I got it apart, I could see that the end of the shaft was really worn bad. And inside the coupling, it's really screwed up bad. And then I thought it was going to be okay on the other end, but as I took it apart, I noticed this is the new one right here. And as I took it apart, I noticed that these little notches in there had wear grooves in those. Let me see if I can show you that. Yes, you can see the wear grooves in that coupling right there. So actually I had to go back after I ordered all these. Luckily it only took them a day or two to get them back in stock, but I had to go back and order more parts. Altogether, these parts you see on the schematic, you know, I had to get all the balls that go inside there. So this is the new one I'm putting together, and it has these little ball bearings that go in that spot. Underneath of those ball bearings, it has these little washers. They call them cushion washers, like this. That, you know, you'll put in there first, and then you'll put your ball bearing in, like so. And there's 4 of those ball bearings, and they'll slide down into the coupler like that. So, you know, the play can come probably, like you saw in mine, in here. It starts to wear back and forth in there, and that's where the play comes from, till eventually, you know, it goes like that, and the whole thing breaks loose, or the splines on the end of your shaft maybe go bad. So that's what's wrong with mine. Unfortunately, the one thing that I've gotten to hate about Kubota, sort of love-hate relationship, because I love the Kubota. However, the parts are super expensive, and you can't find anything anywhere else except for the dealership. So all these parts, just for this small shaft repair job, was $700 and some. Ouch. Each one of these couplers right here, these guys here were like $150 a piece or something. And then, you know, they got you for every single little part individually, because it doesn't seem to come as a kit. So putting this thing back together, and that's what I figured out's wrong with it. Hopefully it'll give me hours and hours worth of service again after that. Getting these ball bearings into this coupler is going to be interesting. So my plan there is to put a magnet on the shaft. I'm hoping that magnet's going to hold all these ball bearings in place while I put it in there, because also in the bottom of this thing a spring has to go in there, and then your coupler piece goes in there, and then after you slide the shaft on, you'll have a C-clip that goes around to hold it all in to the end of the shaft. So that's kind of how it goes together. There also is a picture of the assembly if you have any other questions. And keep watching. I'm going to get this thing back together. I'll let you know of any hurdles that I come across in the meantime. Okay, so I have the first coupling back together. And you can see I've put the boot and everything on. Now I'm ready for the second one. And I'm going to show you, before you do the second one, make sure that you put your boot on, of course, and your clip and your washer and everything in order, like it shows in the picture here. Of how it goes together. So then, this is what I figured out was the easiest way. I was going to use a magnet to hold the balls in place like this, which I have, because the magnet alone will almost hold the balls in place, but they're still a little bit, they want to fall off. And see, since the balls have to go all the way around like that, I put a glob of grease on it. Otherwise, you're going to find that the balls on the bottom are going to fall off. So anyway, that's what I've done. I don't know. I don't have the service manual for this. I probably should have bought one, but frankly, I haven't had to work on anything major on the tractor, luckily, until this point. So I've also greased the inside of the coupler, and you can see in the coupler the little notches where the ball bearings go in, here and here and here and here. So I wasn't sure. I mean, the other one's really dry. I don't know if the factory, if they even grease these or not. I doubt it. But, you know, when in doubt, grease the shaft. So that's what I've done. You know, and then there's a little trick I found when you have to put this in. Notice I put the little retaining pin around the edge of it there. You can see before I slid that on the spline shaft. So when you go to put the shaft and the ball bearings inside of the coupler, you'll have to stand it up vertically. You can try to put this on the end like that. It's tough to do if you try it like this. So the easiest way I found is to actually put it on the floor, because once you put it in there vertically and you've got it standing straight up and down, it doesn't just slide in. Those little O-rings, they create some, you know, some tension on this. So you can even see that on the sheet here, they're called O-ring dampers. Basically, the ball bearings won't just slide in there. They need to be compressed. So at first I was like, well, I tried to squeeze them together to get them in. It was really tough. I couldn't squeeze them in. So I tried to push down hard on the shaft. I couldn't get it to go in without the ball bearings wanting to pop out. So what I found is that I just put this on the concrete floor and stand it up, and then I take a rubber mallet and I'm just gonna give it a good swat on the other side of the shaft, and it forced it right down in there. So it's gonna be hard to do that while holding my camera, but I'm gonna kind of show you the setup. So right here, you can kind of see the magnet's helping me. It's sort of holding the O-ring and stuff up. And the ball bearings are sort of starting to go in there, but they don't really want to go in that spot very well. I'm pushing down on the shaft pretty stout. You can see that they want to wiggle around and whatnot if I go either way. So what I'm going to do is push down as hard as I can, make sure these guys are in the area, and now I'm going to give it a swat. So now you can see that I forced the ball bearings down in there just by giving it a smack on the opposite side. It took me 2 or 3 whacks, but the ball bearings compressed those little rubber O-rings, and it forced it down in. So now you can see that's in there. It will have some play and some movement in it like that. And you sort of have to hold on to the shaft because that spring wants to force it back out. So let me get the C-clip and the washer back in place, and I'll wrap up this video. Well, now you can see I've got it all back together, and then when you do, you'll notice that there is flexibility in that spring and the ball bearings. It allows it to pivot around. Now, I don't know why they went through all this trouble when they could have just used a universal joint. It would have been way cheaper. It wouldn't have cost me $700 for these stupid little parts and the trouble of taking the whole thing apart. They just use a universal joint. Hey, but who am I to say? I'm not a Japanese engineer. Anyhow, it's ready to go. I've got the boots back on, and I'm going to put it back on the tractor and finally get this old workhorse running again. So let's go for it.